Hello everyone, and welcome to this workshop over understanding students with ADHD. The first couple of slides is really just basically a table of contents of the things we're going to cover in this presentation. So if you have any questions, feel free to come back and kind of see where those are. ADHD, when we look at it, it's an acronym for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. And it's, according to the National Institute of Mental Health, it's a mental disorder that causes unusual shifts in your energy, your mood, concentration, just carrying out day-to-day tasks. And when we think about that, we can see this affects about 6.1 million children that are between the ages of 2 and 17 in the U.S. currently. So that is a huge amount. And a lot of times we wonder when that's going to kind of cap or if that's just continually increasing. But we can see here from the statistics that 2.4% of those are 2 to 5 year olds. So this number really starts to increase as they are getting into school. You are seeing 13.6% when they're 12 to 17 years of age. And I just wanted to share an infographic here that I put together so that you can understand how those children are being serviced, because the condition is, as they stated, a mental disorder, and it can and does affect your performances in school. So 9 out of 10 children are receiving that support in school. They're getting those additional accommodations, help in the classroom. But I just want you to be aware that there are many ways that children with ADHD can be served, from peer interventions to social skill training and cognitive behavior therapy as well. And the number of students that are identified, as I mentioned, is increasing year after year. And so you can see from this that in 2003, it was only 7.8%. But 8 years later, in 2011, we're dealing with 11%. That's a 42% increase in those 8 years. So it really goes back to, are more children getting HD, or are we overdiagnosing them? What is leading to this cause of increase? And I feel, as well as there are many surveys out there, data analysis that you can study that show that there is more awareness and there are better ways to diagnose these children. So it's not necessarily overdiagnosing, but a lot of children probably went under the radar previously, especially if these children were minorities, because demographics plays a huge role in the increase. It used to be that just white boys were diagnosed. Now, with better health care, better mental health services, we're noticing a huge uptick in minority groups. And honestly, school performance. We are getting into a technology-driven society. And so parents are wanting to make sure their children are succeeding, and that when they are coming home with grades that are consistently low in multiple subjects, or they're behind their peers, they're going to start questioning, as well as teachers and educators are going to start questioning what's causing these concerns, these issues. So that is another reason why the levels have increased. Now, there are 3 types of ADHD, basically 3 characteristic symptoms, your behaviors, and that's inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. It's really just a difficulty of paying attention, your actions without thinking, and you're being overactive. Those all play a role in a child with ADHD. And I really wanted to take a moment to break down those 3 types, because there are a lot of characteristics and behaviors within each one of them. Having a hard time paying attention, being disorganized, and just making careless mistakes when they are working on things. Following through with instructions has a lot of to do with the careless mistakes that are made. And, just requires tasks that require a lot of ongoing mental effort tend to be an issue for students with ADHD, because of the inability to focus and stay on that task. You have the impulsivity, which is interrupting others, not having patience, speaking out of your turn. It's difficult to take turns for a student with ADHD. And a lot of times they're interrupting others, and so it makes it difficult for them to really hear others as well. Hyperactivity, this is your fidgeting, you're squirming, you know, you're not sitting still in your seat. There's just this constant motion about them. And a lot of times it's called the driven by motor, and, you know, running, jumping, climbing on things that they're not supposed to be. But really, there's just a need to move about, and they can't be quiet when they're playing, and they can't be quiet when they're trying to work, and they talk too much. And these all are part of that hyperactivity. And it's important to keep in mind that behaviors and characteristics between boys and girls do vary. Your boys are going to have more of those external characteristics, whereas your girls have those internal ones. They're going to be more shy. Their self-esteem is lower. They have more anxiety. And so a lot of times girls can get overlooked. They might have that ADHD factors, but they kind of tend to get ignored in that area. And so it's important to look at both sides of the behaviors and characteristics within genders. Flip here to the next slide. And in many ways, these characteristics do affect a child's ability in the classroom, especially they're missing those important instructions that are going to help them comprehend the assignment, or even just understand when that assignment's due or when it needs to be turned in. You know, they're often missing turning things in because they've not kept important data, meaning when it was supposed to be turned in, or keeping themselves organized. They missed it, they lost it, you know, and honestly, just having a hard time starting work as well as finishing the work. Those are all attributes of a child with ADHD, especially when they have external stimuli that are constantly distracting them, making it hard to focus. And according to children and adults with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, CHAD, ADHD is a symptom that affects children in multiple ways. There are varying degrees, and no two people have exactly the same characteristics or behaviors. However, the DSM-5 does require now that professionals diagnose ADHD to include the severity of their disorder. So you're going to have 3 types of severity, from mild with few symptoms beyond the required number to severe with many symptoms. We'll move on here. I want to show you a quick timeline of those severities. A lot of times you're going to notice that if a child has severe ADHD, they're going to be diagnosed early on, around the 4 years of age, whereas a child that has mild ADHD, it will take on average around 6 years of age. So that does affect when they're getting diagnosed, depending on how severe those symptoms are. All right, here, according to IDEA 2004, ADHD does fit under the category of other health impairments. And a lot of times people think that ADHD would be categorized under special learning disabilities. However, that's not the case, but it's important to know that 20 to 30% of those that do have ADHD have a specific learning disability. And finally, I just wanted to discuss some of the effects that those that have ADHD, some of those effects within the classroom, how they affect other children, and how you can manage your classroom to improve the symptoms, the characteristics of ADHD. And that can start with what I like to say are the top 3: seating, classroom management, and organization. You know, your seating, put them by the teacher, or move them away from those distractions. You know, set procedures and routines. Make things clear and concise in your instruction. Reinforce those good things when they're listening and they're following instructions. And give them organizational skills. Help them with assignment notebooks and help them understand how to make things sequential so that they can get things turned in on time. Thanks again for listening to this presentation, and you can find more information if you have questions regarding some of the content through these references.